Hey guys, it's Blake from the Pixelist. Diablo's first patch is finally here. Blizzard has today released the first big balance patch for Diablo 4, and there are some pretty exciting changes in this patch. Now, I'll go ahead and cut straight to the chase. This patch gave us the Nightmare Dungeon buffs we've been waiting on, the XP boost, as well as directly porting you to those dungeons, as well as buffs across the board. That's right, buffs, not nerfs. Buffs across the board for all of the classes in Diablo 4. We're going to be jumping into the patch notes for this patch that got dropped today. I'll also have a link to the patch notes down in the description so you can check that out as well. But if you wanted just the quick and dirty, that is basically what's in the patch, the nightmare changes, and then the buffs across the board to all classes. Having said that, let's jump in to all the changes and discuss what this could mean leading up to Season 1 of Diablo 4. Let's check this out. Okay, hey, let's jump into these patch notes for this patch that just dropped today. So I'm only going to cover sort of the highlights. You're welcome to check out these full patch notes. I'll put the link to the patch notes in the description box below, so you can click on that and check it out. We get a lot of bug fixes. Unfortunately, we don't get any mention of the virtual RAM fix or the stuttering fix that I know a lot of players have been talking about in recent days. So that's an issue, unfortunately, not mentioned, hopefully coming in Season 1. So let's jump into the big stuff, the most important stuff. The first one being experience reward changes, some buffs across the board for experience gained in basically doing nightmare dungeons. Now, previously doing 50s and 60s would give you around 800k to 1 million XP. I'm being told that, or one of the things that I read earlier was that these are now rewarding anywhere from double to triple the amount of experience, which is pretty massive and huge. Also, we get this interesting bullet point about Helltide chests now giving significantly more bonus experience, as well as Whispers giving more experience. So it seems like Blizzard is intent on the in-game activities giving you much more experience. So if you've found yourself in that level 70, level 80 range, and you've been thinking, man, this is just taking forever, I just don't know if I want to keep grinding this, fear not. It seems that they've made this significantly easier for you, and you should find your path to 100 being much simpler. Also, we have an interesting change here with the Helltide roaming bosses. Now, if you've checked out our definitive Helltide farming guide, one of the other things you'll note in that video is I talk about how pointless the world boss, or not the world boss, the roaming boss has been in that zone, Kixareth. Now, some people have pointed out that it drops a lot of Forgotten Souls. However, if you're already in the Helltide opening chest, which of course that's what you're doing, you're already getting plenty of Forgotten Souls from those chests. You're probably not going to waste time on this boss. Well, it seems like Blizzard has taken note of this, and so they've actually improved the loot from this roaming boss. Now, we'll see how much this improvement means. If it's like one of those Destiny situations where they say like, hey, it's great loot, and then you get, 2 tokens and a blue. So we'll see how actually much better this is. I would love for it to be a total loot pinata where everyone's kind of hunting the world boss. But beyond Helltides, we get a massive change that they said they were going to be adding back at the most previous campfire chat, that players can now directly teleport to nightmare dungeons directly through the map. Very exciting, very cool, which means once you click a sigil in your inventory, it's going to open a portal that will take you directly to that nightmare dungeon. No running around the world, which personally I didn't really mind, but I know a lot of people really disliked it. So now you can fortunately port directly to it. The level requirement on bonus catches has been removed. That was a bug they talked about. And that's pretty much most of the quality of life changes that we see in this patch. Now, moving on to balance changes, there are a lot of balance changes. In fact, the most exciting thing about this is that these are all buffs across the board, no nerfs. Well, a couple of tiny nerfs, but for the most part, buffs across the board. And they mention here in this paragraph that they want to make basic skills feel more impactful, other than just like giving you a resource. And they do say also that they hope to make some more changes in the future about it. Now, understand something. They've already said in a previous dev chat that they're not looking to make every build be BIS viable, that they are comfortable with some builds being better than other builds. But one thing many of us have noticed in playing Diablo 4 is that there are some classes where it feels like there is one build and one build alone to play. So fortunately, some of these changes are looking to fix that. I know quite a bit about Barbarian. I know a bit about Rogue and Sork. Druid and Necro are my two weakest classes. You guys will have to help me out for what these changes mean. But let's just jump into it. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you that for the class changes, all of them are going to get resource changes. Everyone has had their resource generation buffed, which is really exciting. Specifically Barbarian, again, we see resource generation buffed. One really interesting change for Hoda Barbarians is this little detail: enhanced flay's vulnerable chance increased from 10% to 15%. Hoda Barbs use flay to get their vulnerability chance, and it is this number times 2 if you're using a two-hander. So this typically has been 20%. Now it's going to be 30% for Hoda Barbs. More on Hoda Barbs in a second. We get some other changes, but skipping down to this one, Iron Skin, we get our first PvP buff. That's right. If you have been miserably hating Hoda Barbs in PvP, unfortunately, we just got buffed even more. Most Hoda Barbs are going to run Iron Skin for their 4th trait. They're typically not going to run any of their ultimates for PvP. And here we find that Iron Skin, which typically was that ability used in that slot, gets doubled in terms of the max life barrier bonus it provides. And we'll come back to that in a sec. Actually, let's go ahead and skip to it. And additionally, the aspect around Iron Skin also increases damage reduction from a max roll 20% to 25%. Pretty exciting stuff. We also have some other changes. Call of the Ancients feels pretty good already. Not so much at in-game, but it's not totally horrible. So this will be pretty interesting. And then an Iron Maelstrom changes, which I don't know anything about Iron Maelstrom. I know that some people have been testing it out on Reddit, saying really good things about it. So it could be pretty exciting. We have some flat affix value numbers. Those damage numbers increased, and that's basically everything for Barb. So some Hoda buffs, vulnerability buffs, and some number changes for some of these other skills that no one really ever uses. Druid, again, I don't know much about Druid. I know that Lightning Storm was buffed, going from 4 seconds to 6 seconds. Maul, Claw, Windshield, Earthspike, all the spirit generators have had an improvement, have had a buff given to each of them. And it looks like Werewolf was buffed as well. Specifically, we see Rabies, the poison damage increased from 53% to 76%. And for Bear Druids, the Pummel ability increased from 140% to 180%. Pretty exciting stuff. Necro, unfortunately, did not get very many, really any at all, minion changes, although there was a change with minions now always engaging targets with a cast curse. Other than that, I don't know enough about Necro to know what these things mean or how valuable these things are. Bone spikes increased from 80% to 120%. But yeah, don't know much about them. Rogues changes seem to primarily be focused on making ranged rogues more viable. We have an improvement across the board here with ranged abilities, specifically Rain of Arrows and Volley, which felt really bad. Rain of Arrows having a cooldown reduction and an imbuement buff, and then Volley having a fairly large damage buff as well. And then lastly, moving on to Sork. Sork had some awesome changes. Sork feels like the class that most people have been struggling with at in-game. We've had some pretty cool buffs to them as well. Specifically, we had Fireball's mana cost reduced. Frozen Orb, which if you're a big D2 fan, got a massive buff. Frozen Orb had its base damage, its explosion damage, both buffed. And then similar to Barb, its vulnerability chance increased from 25% to 30%, as well as Blizzard being buffed as well. And a lot of other buffs happening here as well. Some other cool stuff. Chance to restore mana was buffed on the incendiary aspect. Damage reduction buffed from 10 to 15% to now 20 to 25%. And then mana regeneration buffed as well, up to 30%. So some survivability buffs. Unfortunately, doesn't quite help with the unstoppable meta, which is kind of how Nightmare Dungeons are currently. Unfortunately, Nightmare Dungeons are a CC-a-thon, so if you don't have a way to reliably get your unstoppable status, it's pretty tough to play in those, excuse me, in those in-game activities. But anyway, that's all of our buffs today. What do you think about the changes? Should Blizzard be, I guess, what's missing? What should have been included in this patch that's not in this patch? Otherwise, we have about a month till Season 1, and we should have a dev stream coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what other changes there might be, notably that density change coming in Season 1. I'm pretty excited for the patch. I'd love to know what you think about it. That's all we got for you today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you later. See ya.